Welcome to the Sneaker Laundry. In this video today, I'm going to give you a rundown on how to restore shoes. First, what you need to know is what to look for when accepting a restoration from a customer. When accepting a restoration, make sure you check the size tag on the inside of the shoe to determine the age. The age of the shoe is very important as it will help you determine which methods to use when restoring. If the shoe is 8 to 9 years old, it should be considered high risk when using chemicals such as acetone and polystrippa. These chemicals can still be used, but only as a last resort method and with extreme caution. If the restorer is confident enough in their abilities to strip back the paint without much use of these chemicals, then explain to the customer the method in which you will be stripping back the paint and also let them know that you will require a little bit more time with their shoe. Shoes that are 10 years and older should be turned away as the risk of damage is much higher than the reward of completion. Anything from 1 to 7 years should be accepted without any problem. So first, what you want to do is tape off the shoe. Now, taping up a shoe is a very self-explanatory task, and although you want to use several long pieces of tape, do not be afraid to use multiple small pieces to get into the very small trouble areas. Once your shoe is taped up, what you want to do now is remove the old midsole paint. Removing the old midsole paint should always be the first step when completing a midsole repaint. In order to do this, you must first identify the shoe and move forward with which method is best for that particular shoe. If you have an Air Max, an Air Max TN, an Ultra Boost, an NMD, or a Speed Trainer, only use acetone. If you have an Air Jordan numbered 3 through 8, but the Air Jordan is 8 to 9 years old, it is best to use a file and acetone. And if you have an Air Jordan numbered 3 to 8 that is 1 to 7 years, then use polystrippa and acetone. When stripping the paint on an Air Max, what you're going to want to do first is tape up the shoe to avoid getting any damage from the acetone onto the upper. Next, you're going to want to apply acetone to a cotton ball and understand that only 2 to 3 pumps is going to be more than enough acetone for you to complete the job. If the cotton ball is oversaturated, then you have used too much acetone and you should discard the cotton ball and start fresh. Before moving forward, you must understand that acetone is a very abrasive chemical and little to no pressure is all that is going to be needed in order to start removing the old midsole paint. Next, what you're going to want to do is lightly rub back and forth until the old midsole paint starts to come off. If you are stripping off the paint on an Air Jordan that is 8 to 9 years old, start by using a small file. Understand that the weight of the file should be more than enough to start removing the paint, and proceed with extreme caution as the file can and will cause damage to the midsole. Always be aware of how hard you are pressing this file into the midsole. Once the old midsole paint is removed, apply acetone to a cotton ball and remove any of the midsole paint that you may have missed. Also remember that acetone is extremely abrasive, so please proceed with caution. When stripping back the paint on an Air Jordan that is 1 to 7 years old, you're going to want to tape up the uppers to avoid any damage with the polystrippa or acetone. While avoiding the air unit, apply polystrippa to the midsole using a paintbrush and allow the polystrippa to sit for 1 to 2 minutes. You will notice that the paint will start to bubble up or become paste-like. After the 1 to 2 minute wait, take a file or a craft knife and lightly scrape off the old midsole paint. This should come off with little to no hassle. Once this process is complete, you can apply acetone to a cotton ball to remove any of the polystrippa remnants. Make sure that you remain extra careful while performing this action, understanding that acetone is an extremely abrasive chemical. Once the old midsole paint has been removed, what you're going to want to do next is to perform a deep clean on the shoe. Refer to our cleaning tutorials on how to deep clean shoes. After the deep clean is complete, allow the shoe to dry completely, and once the shoe has been dried completely, you're going to want to tape up the shoe once again. Now, depending on the shoe that you are repainting, you could be dealing with anywhere from up to 1 to 3 colors. Most Air Max, TNs, Ultra Boost, and NMDs only have 1 color to repaint. And Air Jordans tend to have multiple colors, so make sure that you plan accordingly. After taping up all the trouble areas of the shoe, it is time to start painting. In order to avoid brush strokes, it is best to apply a small amount of paint on the brush while maintaining fast, smooth, and even strokes. A lot of people make the mistake of using their entire arm to paint for leverage, but using only your wrist to perform fast brush strokes is the most efficient way to paint. Ideally, you should allow 5 to 10 minutes for the paint to dry in between layers, but you can also use a heat gun to speed up this process if necessary. Make sure that you keep the heat gun on a low setting to avoid damaging anything on the shoe. 7 to 8 layers of paint should be enough to complete the process, but if the paint does not look solid, keep applying thin layers until you achieve that look. After completing your paint job, the next step relies solely on what type of shoe you are restoring. If you are only painting with 1 color, allow the paint to cure overnight before returning to the customer. If you are performing a multicolor paint job, allow the paint to cure overnight before moving on to the next color. Once you've allowed the paint to cure overnight when performing a multicolored paint job, then you can move forward to the next color. The next step is to tape off the shoe yet again. At this point, the shoe should still be taped from the previous steps. Now you're going to want to tape off the entire midsole except for where the colored portion has to go. Once this step is complete, then you can move forward onto painting, and you're going to want to use the same method of painting as before. Fast, smooth, even strokes. 3 to 5 layers of paint should be more than enough for darker colors such as black and brown, while more layers may be required to complete lighter colors such as yellow and orange. If the color is not solid all the way through, then keep applying layers until you achieve that look. And repeat this step as many times as necessary depending on how many colors you have to paint. After drying the last layer of paint, remove the most recent tape that you applied while leaving the tape on the outsole. Now there's a slight chance that you may need to perform some touch-up work. So you're going to want to inspect the shoe for any paint that may have lifted when removing the tape or any areas that you may have missed. Now in order to perform a touch-up, you must have a steady hand. 9 times out of 10, the only touch-ups that are required are near the outsole and sometimes the upper. And remember, touch-ups require a steady hand, so please move forward with caution. Once you've completed all your touch-up work, the next thing you want to do is apply a finisher. Remember, your outsole tape should still be present. When choosing a finisher, it is best to choose one that will best replicate the factory finish that was present before you removed the old midsole paint. Usually all you will have to use is Angelus Matte Finish, but other shoes sometimes require you to use a high gloss finish. Once you have chosen your finisher, you're going to want to apply it the same way that you painted while using a clean brush, preferably a new brush. You may use a heat gun to speed up the drying process and understand that only 2 to 3 layers of finisher is going to be enough to seal in your work. Once you are finished applying finisher, your midsole repaint is complete. You can return the shoe to the customer and continue on to your next project.